Margaret Hayes knelt beside the granite headstone, her knees pressing into the damp grass. The name carved into the stone read Eliza Chase, with dates that spoke of a life cut far too short. Margaret's weathered hands arranged the wildflowers she'd picked from the roadside. Yellow and purple blooms that cost nothing but brought beauty to this quiet place. Every Sunday for the past year, Margaret had made this pilgrimage. Rain or shine, she came to this hilltop cemetery overlooking the valley, carrying whatever flowers she could find or afford, placing them with gentle care beside this grave. She talked to Eliza as she worked, her voice soft in the morning stillness. "The autumn colors are starting to show," Margaret said, adjusting a stem. "You always loved this time of year. You said it reminded you that endings could be beautiful too." Margaret's eyes misted as she remembered. Eliza had been her nurse during those terrible months when Margaret's husband George was dying of cancer. While other nurses came and went with professional efficiency, Eliza had stayed late holding George's hand, listening to his stories, treating him like the person he was rather than just another patient. When George passed, Margaret had no one. Her son had moved overseas years ago, too busy with his own life to visit. Her friends had drifted away, unable to bear her grief. But Eliza kept coming, checking on Margaret even after her professional obligation had ended. They'd formed an unlikely friendship, the elderly widow and the young nurse. Eliza would stop by on her days off, bringing soup or just sitting with Margaret in comfortable silence. She never made Margaret feel like a burden or a charity case. She simply cared. Then one morning, Margaret received a phone call. Eliza had collapsed at the hospital during her shift. An aneurysm, they said. She was only 32 years old. Margaret had attended the funeral, standing at the back of the crowd, watching a man in an expensive suit hold a little girl who kept asking for her mama. That must be the husband and daughter Eliza had mentioned, Margaret realized. The family she'd been so devoted to. After that day, Margaret started her Sunday ritual. It was the only way she knew to honor the woman who had shown her such unexpected kindness. "I wish I could have done more for you," Margaret whispered, touching the cold stone. "You gave me so much, and I had so little to give back." "Excuse me." The voice startled her. Margaret looked up to see a man standing a few feet away, a little girl perched on his hip. She recognized him immediately, the same man from the funeral, though he looked older now, as if grief had aged him beyond his years. The man's eyes were fixed on the flowers Margaret had just placed. His expression was a mixture of confusion and something else, something softer. "I'm sorry," Margaret said, starting to rise. "I didn't mean to intrude on your time here." "No, please," the man said quickly. "I'm not here to ask you to leave. I'm here because I need to understand." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "You've been coming here every Sunday for a year. I've seen the flowers. At first I thought maybe they were from the hospital or old friends, but no one else comes. Just you." Margaret felt her face flush. "I didn't realize anyone was watching." "I come later in the day," he explained. "Every Sunday afternoon I bring Lily here to visit her mother's grave. And every week there are fresh flowers already waiting." His voice cracked slightly. "That's my wife's grave too." The little girl, Lily, was watching Margaret with wide, curious eyes. She had Eliza's same gentle expression. "Your wife saved my life," Margaret said simply. "Not in a medical way, but in every other way that matters." The man's name was Daniel Chase. He suggested they talk, and Margaret agreed. They walked to a bench beneath an old oak tree while Lily played nearby, collecting acorns. Margaret told him everything. How Eliza had cared for George, how she'd continued to visit even after he passed, how her kindness had given Margaret a reason to keep living during her darkest months. "She never mentioned it," Daniel said, his voice filled with wonder. "She came home tired from her shifts, but she never complained. And on her days off, she'd say she was running errands or visiting friends. I never knew she was spending that time with you." "That was Eliza," Margaret said softly. "She never did kind things for recognition. She did them because she couldn't help herself." Daniel was quiet for a long moment watching his daughter play. "After she died, I was so angry," he admitted. angry at the universe, at fate, at God if he exists. Eliza was only 32. She had so much life left to live. It seemed so senseless. It was senseless, Margaret agreed. The world lost someone precious far too soon. But sitting here with you, Daniel continued, hearing how she touched your life, I'm beginning to see something I couldn't see before. Eliza's kindness didn't die with her. It's still here, still making a difference. You come every Sunday to honor her memory, and that's beautiful. Margaret felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I wish I'd had the chance to really thank her, to tell her what she meant to me. Daniel reached over and gently squeezed her hand. I think she knew. Over the following weeks, an unexpected friendship formed. Daniel called Margaret and invited her to dinner. He said Lily had been asking about the flower lady from the cemetery. Margaret arrived at their home with butterflies in her stomach, unsure of her place in this grieving family's life. But Lily ran to greet her at the door, grabbing her hand and pulling her inside to show her the dollhouse in her room. As Margaret sat on the floor playing with Lily, she heard the little girl's laughter for the first time. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching with tears in his eyes. She hasn't laughed like that since her mother died, he said quietly. Margaret became a regular presence in their lives. She wasn't trying to replace Eliza, that would be impossible. But she could offer what she had: time, attention, and a grandmother's love to a little girl who needed it. She taught Lily to bake cookies, the same recipes she'd made for her own son decades ago. She read bedtime stories and listened to endless tales about preschool adventures. She gave Daniel the support he needed, someone who understood grief intimately and didn't expect him to move on or get over it on any timeline but his own. For Margaret, caring for Lily filled a void she'd almost forgotten was there. She'd missed being needed, missed having purpose beyond her own survival. One Sunday morning, 6 months after their first meeting at the cemetery, Daniel appeared at Margaret's small apartment. Lily and I were wondering, he said with a shy smile, if you'd like to come with us to visit Eliza today. Make it official that you're part of our ritual. Margaret's heart swelled. I would love that. At the cemetery, they stood together, the three of them. Daniel placed a bouquet of roses. Lily left a drawing she'd made, and Margaret added her wildflowers. Mama, Lily said, touching the headstone, Margaret makes me smile like you used to. Daniel's arm came around Margaret's shoulders, and she leaned into his steady presence. They stood there in shared silence, three people bound together by the woman they'd all loved, finding healing in their unexpected family. You know, Daniel said as they walked back to the car, Eliza would be so happy to know you two found each other through her. She always believed that love multiplies, it never divides, that there's always room for more people in your heart. She was right, Margaret said, taking Lily's small hand in hers. She was right about so many things. A year later, Margaret moved into the guest suite in Daniel's house. She insisted on paying rent, though he protested. Together, they created a home filled with Eliza's presence, not as a shrine to the past, but as a foundation for their future. Lily called her Grandma Margaret, and the name fit perfectly. Daniel found himself healing in ways he hadn't thought possible, grateful for this woman who'd loved his wife enough to tend her grave, and who now loved his daughter with the same selfless devotion. They still visited the cemetery every Sunday, all three of them together. The flowers they left were more abundant now, a celebration of a life that continued to bring people together even in death. And Margaret, who'd once believed her own life was essentially over, discovered that sometimes our most important chapters are written later than we expect. That love and family can be found in the most unexpected places. That tending to someone's memory can lead to tending someone's heart. Eliza's gift had been her capacity to see people, really see them, and care without expecting anything in return. And that gift lived on in the family she'd built, in the connections she'd forged, in the love that continued to grow from the seeds of kindness she'd planted. Some people leave behind wealth or fame. Eliza left something far more valuable. She left behind people who knew how to love well because she'd shown them the way. If this story touched your heart, Please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about unexpected connections, enduring love, and the ripples of kindness that continue long after we're gone. Leave a comment about someone whose kindness changed your life and keep their memory alive by sharing their story. Sometimes the greatest legacy is simply being remembered with love.